Hey, everybody, welcome to the Tom Rowland Podcast, brought to you by Starbright. We're brought to you by Starbright today. As always, Starbright is the maker of an awesome line of products to take care of your boat. That's where I use it most, whether it's the Salt Off product or any of the boat cleaning products. Starbright has you covered. Definitely check them out. They're not only a great company for the products that they have, but they also do a tremendous amount in conservation, and that is certainly important to us all.
I'm Monte Burke, and this is the Tom Rowland Podcast.
Monty, how are you, man?
I'm great, man. How you doing?
I'm great. I'm doing great. I got the books in the mail. You have been incredibly busy since the last time that we spoke, and I was surprised too. I look back; it's been almost 5 years. 5 years
since we talked. Yeah, since Lords of the Fly, which is crazy. Yep.
Yeah.
And then I'm happy that those next two books came out, but I wouldn't suggest a future Monty to do two books in 6 months is a little bit overwhelming. And two things with fishing and college football. So I've kind of been going. I've been like this divided, so for the last.
Well, I'm interested in that. Do you think that being divided like that? Do you think that your workflow was better? You're more creative. You're getting away from one subject and moving into the other, or is it better to focus on just one?
I think it's better to have two things for me anyway.
Really?
It's so fun to dive into one thing. It's a little bit like having a season, right? I mean, that's why the NFL and college football is so popular, is because there is an off season. Like the NFL doesn't really let you have an off season, but there really is one. And so you crave it, right? So by the time I'm done with a college football book, I can't wait to get back to writing about fly fishing. In fact, when I had kind of done you have like about a month and a half of crazy promotion after a book comes out, and then things kind of slowed down a little bit. And the minute that slowed down, I had this crazy spree. I wrote 3 fly fishing stories. It was so fun to kind of go back to that. And the same with same with the fly fishing book. When I'm totally immersed in one, get it out, and but then I'm ready to kind of go back to college football or some other subjects.
So when you go from football to fishing, had you already kind of been thinking about those things, and you just needed to get it all out?
Yeah, I mean you're always. I've got right now. I've got like 6 kind of half done, not even half done projects, or like they're 5% done that I've just been thinking about. And you just when you get fully immersed in a book, you forget everything else in your life. Really, everything that you do kind of feeds into that book. So then but when that's done, I come back to those ideas. I've got a whole sheet where I go back and kind of look and see which ones are most promising. And it's funny. A lot of people ask me, why college football and why fly fishing? And my mother has a great answer to that. She always would say, she's from Alabama. She would always say, baby, I'm just so happy that you put to use all those hours you spent watching college football and fishing. And she's right. I mean, that's pretty much what I did when I was a kid. It's like I played sports, all this sort of stuff too, but I was really just totally obsessed with those two things.
Well, I was obsessed with watching fishing too. My dad and I used to watch a lot of fishing on Saturday mornings and stuff. But the precursor to that was, or maybe right after, was professional wrestling. Like the fishing shows would come on, and then professional wrestling would come on, and so I kind of hung around. Yeah. I was a real wrestler, an amateur wrestler, so I wasn't all that interested in professional wrestling. But we only had 3 channels on TV back then. Yeah. You just kind of hang in there, and so I guess if I became a writer, I would be writing about fishing and professional wrestling and college football. I like all 3.
Oddly similar bass fishing shows and pro wrestling in a weird way.
Yeah. Well, they know they know the audience, right?
Yep,
so
they sure do.
We'll put this on right after or right before.
Yeah.
But this is not your first foray into football. You wrote about Nick Saban before. Mm-hmm. We talked about that last time. How do you identify this story with Pete Carroll, and then also get the access to everyone that it takes to write this story?
Yeah. So this was a weird one, because it's not really a biography of Pete Carroll. It's like a biography of a certain time. I do start with him being born and where he grew up and all kinds of stuff like that, but it sort of stops when he leaves for USC. There's a little bit about the Seahawks. I just looked at this. I love writing about college coaches, so it is very Pete Carroll focused, because he's obviously the kind of the main character of this 9-year window when he was at USC. So coaches to me are always so fascinating. In fact, there's one other college football book I did was also about a coach as well. So, but I looked at this USC chapter of Pete Carroll's life and just thought it was so fascinating. This kind of singular time in college football that had never happened before and will never happen again. I mean, this was Carroll came in with his tail between his legs. He'd been fired by the Jets. He'd been fired by the Patriots. He'd had a year out of football. And then he took over a program. He was the third or fourth candidate. They wanted other people. Took over a program that was also downtrodden. It was a lot like when Nick Saban went to Alabama. A program looking for it to revive its past glory. And then, something really magic happens, right? I mean, he takes some of the old parts that he was given by the previous coaches, Troy Polamalu and Carson Palmer, and starts this build. And then they win 2 titles in a row. They come within 6 inches of winning 3 in a row, which has never happened in the modern era of college football. And then, there's the scandal at the end. So it makes for a writer, it's a great kind of narrative arc, right? It kind of like there's this build and then there's this, huge fall at the end. And there were no NFL teams in LA at the time. So, college football, I always think of college football as being kind of like a sport, unlike the NFL, a sport of kind of the medium to small towns. You think of Tuscaloosa State College. USC's different. They're in Los Angeles. And when they were there were no NFL teams there. And they started winning. And all of a sudden, celebrities, they just loved Carroll's energy. They loved these players, the electricity of these players like Reggie Bush and Mountain Liner. And, all of a sudden you had the Fonz, Arnold, Will Ferrell, Snoop Dogg, not just going to games and being on the sidelines, like actually going to practice. Carroll also had open practices, which was really weird, totally opposite of Nick Saban. So to me, it was like this crazy kind of singular era that was just wild. Which I don't think we'll ever see again, even in the NIL era, just because there's so much movement and there's not as much of attachment to some of the players as there used to be. And in fact, it got to the point where there was a point when Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart, and particularly Matt Leinart, were more famous than some of the celebrities who were coming to see them. I mean, I went back for research. I went back and looked at all these old issues of People magazine and Us Weekly, which were kind of like the TMZs back in the day. And it would be like, Robert Redford was seen out dining somewhere, and then Matt Leinart was seen at Nobu, with Paris Hilton. It was like this just crazy, like it just doesn't happen that much anymore. We're sort of, everything's kind of bifurcated, everyone's attention's somewhere else. And, you go back to that USC Texas game, which some consider to be the best one ever played in college football. It's the most watched title game of all time. Yep.
Wow.
So anyway, I'm really attracted to football coaches in general. I love college football, but college football coaches in specific. And so that was kind of a no-brainer for me to really look into.
What do you think it was about Pete Carroll? Was it something in his personality or his organization or his mindset that was able to turn that whole thing around for him?
I mean, I think, what he was a completely unconventional coach. He grew up in the Bay Area in San Francisco during the Summer of Love, was very influenced by that. Went to kind of like a college where he studied Far Eastern mysticism and all these psychologists. And so he comes out of that and he goes into football coaching. He like Saban, he wanted to be he wanted to be something other than he was a mediocre college player who wanted to do something else, wanted to keep playing and wasn't good enough. So he kind of swallowed that and turned that into coaching. But he was always he was unconventional from the start. He was a player's coach, which back then was a real pejorative term. People, oh God, a player's coach is the worst thing you could be.
Say that. I mean, describe that for somebody that might not know what a player's coach is.
So he had one famous thing when in one of his first jobs, he was coaching the secondary, and he was very frustrated with the way that it was all top-down stuff. It was all the coaches telling the players what to do. And he had one session that the head coach didn't know about, where he had all of his secondary guys in the room. He said, all right, guys, what do you guys want to do? What do you think we could do? And he sat and listened to them for like 3 hours, right? And they gave him all this input. And then he ran to the coach. He runs over to the head coach and says, I just cracked the code. These guys are so energized. They're so excited. And he was like, and the head coach said, don't you ever listen to what they say. You're the one who. So Carroll he was a defensive genius, right? So he worked his way up the ranks. By the time he got to the Jets, which was his first head coaching job, he was still a player's coach. In fact, there's one of my favorite scenes in the book is he's standing up at his introductory press conference, and he comes in. The first thing, he bounds in like a golden retriever, and the first thing he says is, "Gentlemen, there are no rules here. We're not going to have any rules." And the camera kind of pans to Leon Hess, who was this old school owner of the Jets, who's sitting there in his brown tweeds with his arms crossed, and he's like, "Oh my!" He gives an "Oh my God" expression on his face. Like, what have I gotten myself into? So he gets fired after a year of that. Goes to the Patriots, does the same thing. Lets the players kind of run a lot of what's going on. Has a lot of fun. Built a basketball court and plays basketball with his players and his coaches, stuff like that. Wears flip-flops, rides his bike to practice, all this sort of stuff. Robert Kraft, who's the owner of the Patriots, had no idea what to do with this guy, so he fires him. And it just worked in college, right? I mean, when he got to USC, first of all, he was down to his third strike, right? If you get fired 3 times within that short period of time, you're an assistant coach for the rest of your life. So he was extra motivated. He hired great people. But I think his sort of, the overwhelming sense I got from the people he coached at USC was that he made the game fun. And I think for, college kids are younger, more impressionable. Back then, they were more captive. They would stay for 3 or 4 years. Sure. I think it just worked there. And he would later prove, of course, that it worked in the NFL with the Seahawks. But that was his kind of proving ground. And those kids who were so hungry to win, a program that was so hungry to win, fans that were so hungry to win, it all worked.
That's amazing. And so you look at this, and do you need a publisher anymore with all of the books that you've written and everything? I mean, I know you need a publisher for things, but I know that also one of the roles of a publisher is to tell you when this is a book. Like, yeah. Do you need that anymore? Or
I do, yeah. I mean, it's not usually the publisher. It's usually, the publisher will have the final word, but my gatekeeper is my agent, who I love and who I've been with now for 20 plus years. And, I pitch him ideas all the time. He takes like 1 out of 4, right? He's a great reader, and he has a real sense of what makes for a great book. So I've pitched all kinds of ideas, and he's like, I don't think that'll work. So that's my first barrier. And then I write a proposal, give it to him, and then he goes out and tries to sell it. And of course, that's where the rubber meets the road, right? That's where you've got publishers, chiming in on whether they think it's a book or not. But I still, the great thing about this job is that, this is going to sound weird to say, but the great thing about my job is it never gets easier. In fact, in some ways, it gets harder. I mean, I think you get better at that. You're probably a little better. I'm probably a little better now than I was 20 years ago at some of the technical aspects, but that cursor blinking up there in the left-hand corner on a blank page still makes me feel exactly like it made me feel 25 years ago. And it doesn't, everything you write is, unless you're plagiarizing or, God forbid, using AI, everything you which is plagiarism, by the way, everything that you write is original, right? So it's like coming from your own head, and it's still really hard, but I love that because it's like this constant challenge, right? I mean, I've got a lot of friends now my age who have been in their law jobs or whatever, and they're bored out of their mind with their job. I'm not bored. I'm still biting my fingernails when I'm thinking about an idea, wondering how the heck I'm going to actually write this thing, like worried that I can't pull it off. It's all that same, those same emotions I went through, 25 years ago when I published my first book. So I love it.
That's great. And then you touched on something that is a theme right now for us. As we go into this year, I've been asking a lot of people about AI, about what people think I feel like we're on a real crossroads right now. Kind of like I saw when the internet first came out. You're seeing websites, you're seeing, it move from, chat rooms and message boards to basically to social media. And there was this big sweeping change that happened in a very short period of time. And I feel like we're there again, but it's going to be exponentially larger. But you have a very unique perspective on AI. So I just wonder how you feel where we are with it right now, and where do you think that writers are going with it? I mean, let me ask you this: Would you think it would be plagiarism to take a lot of your thoughts and organize them in AI and then write, or do you use it at all?
I don't use it at all. I mean, I think unintentionally, I just use it sometimes when I'm doing Google, right? Like there's some AI functions in that. But I purposely don't use it at all. I purposely don't read AI stuff. I don't want to, I think it's already going to, writing is hard enough. It's going to be harder when you have to kind of write against AI. So, and I'll start this saying that I'm really biased against AI because it is a threat to my job. It's a threat, not necessarily to some of the books I've done, but some of the magazine stories. I could see a magazine saying, well, why send that Burke kid down to Chile and spend whatever amount of money when we can do this in 20 seconds with a prompt or whatever, right? So I just want to make sure that I've noted my bias there.
Right.
I do not like AI for a number of reasons. One is I feel like, and I do get sometimes emails that have been sent to me which I can tell are AI. I think first of all, it is plagiarism. Ethan Hawke made this point. I don't know. I saw an interview he did, and it is plagiarism. It's the presentation of work as your own that's not your own, right? You prompted it, yeah, good for you, but you didn't write it, right? So it is the definition of plagiarism. Second of all, I think just to hand over our agency, like the act of writing, even act of writing an email or act of writing a text, is putting thoughts is the sort of mechanical part of thinking, right? When you sit down and you type something out, your brain is the biomechanical part of thinking, and I don't know why. For the life of me, we would want to give that over to machines, right? So if AI kind of goes to where I think it's going, it's pretty much going to be, machine writing talking to machine writing, which takes all of the humanity out of it. I don't like it in that respect at all. I also don't like the fact that, and maybe this is getting a little deeper than you want, but I mean, it doesn't seem like the people who are running these AI companies are at all altruistic. I think they try to come across as they are, but from what I've seen, it's like, it's going to take over all of these jobs. I have kids in college right now, and I want them to have jobs when they come out, but all of the entry level jobs seem to like they might get wiped off the face of the earth. I think working, I saw Mark Andreessen one time say, "Oh, it's going to be great. In 20 years, no one's going to have to work." And to me, that's a nightmare. That is a nightmare. Work is what humans need, purpose, right? The whole reason that there's a problems that we have now with social media and problems that we have now with people having to go to shrinks and all sorts of stuff like that is your loss of purpose. There's nothing better, and this as an angler and as someone who works out and who lives in the real world. Like purpose is what makes everything go, right? I mean, it's what gets you out of bed in the morning. It's like I can't tell you how when I'm in the middle of writing a book is probably the happiest I am. As a human, and it's because I have purpose, right? Yeah. And so I don't. If you just like everyone not working is not a good thing for the human psyche. It's also not. I mean, you have so much to figure out if people don't work. Universal. Imagine trying to implement universal basic income now with the kind of Congress and that we've had over the last 15 years, 20 years. You can't. It's almost impossible. So I guess the bottom line is I can't stand AI. I didn't ask for it. I don't know anyone who did, and I don't know why we're being faced to deal with this thing that is going to be looks like it's going to be super, super, super disruptive, and I think in a really bad way.
Yeah, well, I don't disagree with you on so many of the points that you just made. One of the things that is interesting, I have kids that have graduated college. All three of mine are graduated. One very recently, and my middle one. He went traveling right after college, and he traveled for a while. He worked all the way through college. He took all that money. He went all over the place, everywhere he wanted to go, and he just did these incredible things. And he comes back, and I don't know. There was a struggle. There was a little bit of a struggle, and one of the things was trying to find your purpose. Like that seems to be advice that has been given to young people for a while now, and in a lot of ways, from people like you who are doing exactly what you want to do, and you are definitely contributing to the world. People like me that were fishing guides and are doing the same kind of thing on a daily basis, to where you're seeing smiles on people's faces and you're teaching them how to do things, and they're experiencing this thing that they've really wanted to do for a long time, and you're making it happen. And it feels like that's a purpose.
Yep.
Some people don't find that, and I wonder if you think the same. Or as you're coaching your kids into this next chapter of their life, if you think that, like, the purpose, I feel like some young people are kind of being confused of that, like they're supposed to save the world, or they're supposed to have this great thing that they're doing that's going to have a massive effect on the entire world, and that's what they're here for, and that's what their whole life means. Where you also said it just a second ago, and this is what I was talking to my son about. I'm like, purpose doesn't have to be that. Like, purpose is responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Purpose is like showing up at work on time and doing things that people are expecting of you to do, and it doesn't have to be this overwhelmingly incredible thing like Mother Teresa. Like it can just be that you do a good job and that you enjoy working. I don't know. Have you thought about that at all? Because I don't know how old your kids were, but this took me by surprise as a parent. Like, that there was a struggle of trying to find that after watching my kids do just, they did the sports that they wanted to do and they excelled at them. And then they went to the college that they wanted to do and they excelled there. And then they get out and they're kind of like, now what?
I think it's funny because I think, just speaking about AI, I mean, I think AI and social media make it harder maybe sometimes to hone in. I mean, AI is like a shortcut, right? So a purpose is something to me, and like you said, it doesn't have to be saving the world. It can be, as little as doing a good job of taking care of your kids, taking care of your dog, exercising, whatever, right? But it's about work. It's about working. It's about thinking hard. It's about friction, right? And so what AI is promising to do is to remove the friction, right? And you don't gain anything. It's just like a workout. I mean, AI is basically, you telling your agent to go work out for you, and then you'd be like, that was awesome, and then having a protein drink, right? When you didn't do a damn thing, right? So I think having that as a part of this sort of conversation makes it really hard to kind of figure out your purpose because you don't really know what that means, how to get there. I think social media makes it seem like everyone else is doing something so cool, right? Yes. And so big because it's got this like kind of blasting effect of amplifying effect, I should say.
Right, but people are also showing you their best.
Exactly. No one's showing you. No one's showing you when you've had food poisoning for 24 hours and you're curled up on the bed, right? So I think that makes it. I also just think the digital world just makes it harder, right? It just makes it harder for people to kind of just sit down and calm down and think about what really matters and what they really want to do, right? So I haven't had one kid graduate yet, so I don't know. I'm kind of terrified, right? I mean, about like I think they'll be fine, knock on wood, right? But it'll be really interesting to see how we do that. And it's interesting. You talk about purpose is a lot of the things I've written about. In fact, almost 99% of the things I've written about have been about the word of the word would be obsession, right? Mm-hmm. Which is a type of purpose. It can be taken too far and become something really horrible if you take obsessions too far. But the whole world is kind of run by or runs on little tiny obsessions, right? I mean, it's like whether you're a baseball card collector or if you're trying to catch the world record tarpon or you love working out or whatever, right? That's the thing that gets you animated and gets you out of bed, right? So that's such an important part. Becoming kind of obsessed with something is like such an important part of the human experience, I think, like that. Because otherwise you sit around and like, I don't know, like I think about people who don't have obsessions, and it seems like a rather bland life. I mean, you can kind of entertain yourself to death, right? You can, watch Netflix all day and go on social media all day, stuff like that. But it's a relatively empty life, right? So it's like it's not a. I think there's a reason. I guess I'll say there's a reason why I'm obsessed with obsessive people, because I love seeing how animated and how incredible people can be when they get obsessed with something. I mean, Nick Saban is the most obsessed person I've ever written about. So is Pete Carroll. Two totally different coaches did it two totally different ways, but we're both like just obsessed, right? And they love I think when you get obsessed, and this is, I think, an important part, is you fall in love with the journey, right? There's that old cliche about it's not the destination, it's the journey, which is true. You need a destination, I think, to define the journey, but falling in love with the little steps or the minutia is everything, right? I mean, it's like it's so awesome, and that's what being a writer is all about, right? It's like falling in love with the construction of a sentence, or finding the right word, or how to do which chapter should go where and all that sort of stuff. That's all the minutia that goes into creating, a greater whole.
Right. I think that that was really well put together. I think that you only learn that after you've learned how to become really good at one thing, right? Like somebody that loves the journey is somebody that's already achieved greatness somewhere in their life. Maybe they learned how to play the piano or something like that, and then they can transfer that and use those same principles and that same drive to become great at the piano, and they apply all those things to something completely different, like coaching or fishing or something like that. And it's like, well, if you can become really great, world class in one thing, I feel like you can do that in anything. And you can do that because of exactly the way that you described it. It's about the journey. That's what's driving you. You're not trying to be the best. Maybe you are trying to be the best in the world. I don't know. Maybe that's what's driving you. But what gets you there is the journey, and that every single day. People call that discipline. But for the people that are really doing it, they don't need discipline. They are driven to a point that discipline doesn't even apply. That's what I think. But
I agree.
I
think they focus on those little parts. They almost have blinders on, just focusing on those little parts, and then all of a sudden one day they take off the blinders, like, holy crap, I'm really good at this.
No kidding. Exactly. And so one of the things that I wanted to talk about was mindset, because we talk about mindset a lot on this podcast, and we talk about it with different types of people. You've had the opportunity to talk with some of the top performers in a lot of different areas. Certainly when you talk about Nick Saban and Pete Carroll, they have the ability to encourage other people to have a certain mindset, or to demand a certain mindset, or to create a culture of a certain mindset. And it sounds like Pete Carroll and Nick Saban did it very differently, but probably there was more similarity than differences. It was a different approach going to the same thing of excellence, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And then you go into fishing, which is what people here are really interested in, and you're talking about Tom Evans and Steve Huff, and in your new book you have Nathaniel Linville, and you have John O'Hearn, and you have Andy Mill, and you have these people who are truly great. They really are, and they've proven it with world records and Tarpon tournament wins, and Lefty Cray has proven it with books and demonstrations for his entire life, and truly exceptional people. And I'm wondering if you made, especially since you said that you're writing about football, and then you're writing about fishing, and you're doing these things in two different subjects at basically the same time. Did you notice similarities between the high-level coaches, the high-level anglers, the high-level guides, and what stuck out as like the things that you noticed about them?
Yeah, I think the two things we just talked about. I think becoming obsessed with something was the sort of beginning, right? They just, when I look at Steve Huff, like all he ever really wanted to do was to be a fishing guide. Mm-hmm. And he became obsessed with it. And he will tell you in that story I wrote about him in Rivers Always Reach the Sea, he admits when he first did it, he was terrible. He said he felt terrible. He felt so bad for the sucker who was his first client. He didn't know what he was doing, but he was obsessed with it. And with that obsession came this yearning, this desire to learn, right? To learn all about this thing. And for Steve, every push of that push-pull is meaningful, right? Every little thing is meaningful like that. And so I think from that obsession, which is football coaches and Stu Apte and Steve Huff and Tom Evans, stuff like that, you learn what we talked about before. You learn to love that learning part, so that journey, right? That journey to whatever your destination might be. And, there was no one more obsessed with the minutia of football than Nick Saban. It was like how the cornerbacks' hips were lined up, what was being made in the cafeteria, how long their studs were on their shoes, that kind of thing. Same thing again goes for Steve Huff. How you tie that leader, it's got to be perfect. Again, like how you angle the boat depending on your angler. Are you 11:30 guy? Does he want a 12 o'clock shot? All that kind of stuff. Stu Apte used to, stay up all night long and tie and retie leaders until he got them perfectly. done. And, I mean, so there's a ton of similarities between the two factions that I write about, which I love. And the mindsets, with the world's best fly anglers and the world's best coaches is very, very similar.
Do you notice, like, we're talking about coaches and players, and then you have guides and anglers. And do you notice a difference between, like, are the coaches and the guides similar, and the anglers and the players are similar? Because it's kind of different, but it's kind of the same too. Is that a coach really has to bring out the best in that person, and they have to do it in a way that they can communicate something that probably is inconvenient and not exactly what you want to say, but they have to learn how to say that to somebody to where they're going to actually feel like, okay, this person's actually trying to help me, and I'm going to listen to them, and and you're already the top. For you to be under one of those coaches, you're already the top.
Right.
And then you have the similar thing going on with the guides and the anglers, that the guides out there every single day, and this guy, and Andy Mill, and Tom Evans, they are really, really, really good, and in fact, better angler than the guy on the back. But the guy on the back knows things that the guy on the front doesn't. Same thing with the coach and the player.
Absolutely.
Interesting. It's kind of interesting, and I don't know that I know enough about that. I've never been in a professional football locker room to see the interaction, but I've been on a lot of those boats, and there are very interesting interactions, which you talked about pretty well in your first book, not your first book, but Lords of the Fly. It's like a marriage almost.
Yep.
And how do you see the two being different from one another?
I mean, the similarities are kind of crazy, like between, like you put it well, with the coaches and the guides, right? So one of the reasons that college football coaches just fascinate me is because of the different kind of personas they have to inhabit, right? I mean, they're the CEO basically of a medium-sized company, but they're also like, you have to be great recruiters. They have to be teachers. They have to be psychologists. They have to be priests sometimes, and then of course they have to be also, depending on where they are sort of like minor media celebrities or sometimes major media celebrities. I often think of, when I'm fishing with Steve Huff, how much he's coaching me, right? I mean, he's doing a lot of the same things that a very good football coach does. He is helping me see, he sees exactly how to do it, and he's trying to transmit that information to me. He has to play the role of a cheerleader. He has to play the role of sometimes scolding, in his own way. But when I screw up, he has to be a psychologist. I mean, I'll never forget the first time I caught a tarpon was with him, and that day was this. I wrote about this in Lords of Fly. I just screwed up everything. I mean, there were laid up fish everywhere, and I could not. I mean, throw it to the tail, bonking the thing on the head. And like at that point, it was like fit for the funny farm, right? Like I was just like, you lose all your confidence, right? You're like, I can't even do anything. And he's like, we're going to get one. Don't worry about it. Just get one. He's like, just one good cast. And he was right. I made one good cast. I still flushed that fish. But it was like, I think the analogy I made was like when you're playing golf and you hit like a perfect 3-iron, you don't even feel it, right? It's just like this. It's just like this wonderful non-feeling, right?
Yes.
And that's kind of the same thing I felt when I made that cast. And all of a sudden, I believe Steve. I was like, you know what? He's right. I am going to get one. And lo and behold, still took a couple more fish, but we got one. But yeah, so there's this, these guides have to tweak the way they teach and the way they talk to each individual angler has different ways of learning, right? Some are visual learners, some like to hear it, oral learners, and the same thing with these football coaches. The football coaches obviously have a lot more guys to do. I mean, they've got to kind of coach their assistants, and then they have to coach their players. And there are different ways of doing that. I mean, interesting thing, but Nick Saban and Pete Carroll, Nick Saban was more kind of in the militaristic way, like, all right, here's the way we're going to do it, and you fit into this. Whereas Pete Carroll was way more individualistic. He would be like, Lendale White learns differently than Reggie Bush, so I'm going to coach Lendale White, or I'm going to teach him a little bit differently. Saban did coach people differently, but he taught people a lot in a very similar way. So very, very fascinating. I mean, all that stuff I love. I mean, it's so interesting how people learn, how they teach, how they coach. Fascinating.
So you've had the opportunity to fish with great guides, legendary guides, probably other guides. You've had the opportunity certainly to watch these coaches that are legendary, and you watch college football your whole life. What do you think separates the truly great from which you've had that experience? What do you think from the rest of them, the good?
I think to a certain degree, people are born with an innate. There's an innate thing that they're born with. Now that doesn't mean that they're always. That doesn't mean that they're going to. Say you're innately born with 35% of what can make you great. Doesn't mean you're going to capitalize on that. You could go do something else. You could go be an insurance salesman or something like that. But I think they're born with this innate sort of. It's almost like the way way a fishing guide sees a flat, the way that a football coach can see the whole game, right? So you're kind of born with that within you. And then from that point on, it's about this desire, this curiosity. So like learning from everything you do. Everything you do is an input to what you do. And then, frankly, it's hard work, right? I mean, and discipline. I mean, Nick Saban and Pete Carroll, even though Pete Carroll was loosey-goosey and a player's coach, like insanely disciplined and insanely hardworking, right? So, and I looked back at, someone like Steve Huff, the guy, he's 80 now, and he does not take one push off, right? One push of the pole off. That every one of those things is meaningful, never stops working hard. So, I mean, that's kind of what separates there's plenty of people who have the innate talent, I think, like that. But then to get to that next level, it's a combination of kind of this curiosity and this continual learning and hard work. And I think that's probably the same in any business. I mean, I see that in writing as well. I see a lot of people who have, a lot of innate talent and they just don't have great, work habits, but I think you have to have some kind of innate talent. Like, you could have all the smarts that LeBron James has about basketball, and if you just were a scrawny 95-pound person, you're not going to be as good as he is, right?
Right. But I wonder if there's, I always wonder, somebody that's really great at something or became really great at something, I think, like you described it really well, they have this ability to see things and see a path to that. And then they just happen to be really interested in football. Yep. And a Nick Saban finds that and starts on that path. And obviously, it's also very lucrative. He can make a living doing it. He can do more than make a living. He can build an empire doing it.
Yep.
So that has to be some sort of a driver. But even somebody that's like a great fishing guide, they see things differently, and they navigate this path like you're talking about. And I just always kind of wonder, some people, you see them and you're like, if that guy wasn't a great fishing guide, he'd be great at something else. That's just the way that they operate. That's just the way that they do it. If they were an insurance salesman, which is something that you suggested, they would probably be really, really great at it, unless they just hated it. Like if they were interested in it and they still have that same mindset, they're going to be successful at it.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, there has to be some carrot too, right? There has to be something that comes with it. Like you mentioned money, and I think both Nick Saban, he wouldn't admit it, and Pete Carroll liked the sort of spotlight being on them a lot, right? They both were performers, right? When they knew the cameras were on them, and Nick would always have the look on his face like that, and Pete would always be chewing his gum and hopping around, So they had this sort of natural performance thing going on. But I think that there has to be some either it's about money or fame or stuff like that, or just, for Steve, it was Steve Huff and some of these guides, like that. It's about the ability to be on the water every day. And they're people. A lot of these people are people persons too, right? I mean, they genuinely like being around other people. They get a lot of satisfaction in helping people achieve their goals and their dreams. I mean, Steve Huff would always describe himself. He said, "I'm not really a fishing guide. I'm a dream maker." Which I always loved. He's like, my job is to make people's dreams come true, right? And so it's such a cool, and I think about that every time we fish together. We're fishing next month, and I mean, my dream is to hook and catch a couple tarpon, and he's going to do everything he can and it makes him so happy when it happens, and it actually weirdly puts a little pressure on me, because I'm like, I want to, the guy back here is working his butt off and gets a lot of satisfaction out of this. I got to keep up my end. So it actually makes you kind of
course,
up your game a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But they're great communicators, these guys. I mean, it's not only they have great pattern recognition. fishing guides and coaches, right? They whether it's a flat or a football game, but they're also great like you can have all that knowledge in your head, but you've got to be able to communicate it well. And so they're, pattern recognition and communication. And like I said, too, like psychologist, teacher, priest, all military leader, all kinds of things all wrapped in one. It's very cool.
Sometimes the most effective means of communication about some things like that is just silence. Like,
sure.
you make a bad cast and you go, "How was that?" And there's nothing comes out, and you're like,
you already know you're looking for a way out of it. Basically, you're looking for them to bail you out, and they're like, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to be quiet.
They're trying to be nice. At some point, that wasn't too bad. But then there's also just the silent shaking of the head slightly, and probably with a buff on the face, so you can't fully see what's behind there, but
I'm totally the guide angler dynamic, especially when you get into things like saltwater fly fishing, is such an interesting dynamic, because it's some of these are like the captains of industry, right? And they're out there and they're turned into 12-year-olds. Yes. They're turned into 12-year-olds by these guys in the back of the boat, right? Who they're the bosses. And, Steve's got a great quote in his book. There was some. Or in Lords of Fly, there was some, like, I forget who he was. He was like Prudential CEO or something like that. And he got on the boat and he was all, like, I think we should go over here, Steve. I think we should go over here. And Steve was basically like, you're done, dude. You're off my boat. You're not going to come in here. And, you need to kind of sublimate your ego for a little while, which is actually probably a good thing for these guys a little bit, I would imagine.
Well, I think some people really, really enjoy it. And I have noticed that, to where they are always making the calls, and they are and the pressure is always on them, and they can step onto someone else's boat who is truly way better than they will ever be at something that they really love, and just let them go. Mm-hmm. I mean, for some people, it's a dream come true, and I think those are the ones that book 100 days, because it's the one time in their life that they don't have to do all of the other things that they're expected to do everywhere else they go.
That's a great point. Yeah.
It's also that they're with someone who literally wants nothing from them other than their success and what they came for. Yep. And everywhere else in most of these people's lives, somebody's trying to get 15 minutes of their time so they can deal, so they can do this, so they can do that. It's a very interesting dynamic.
Yeah, and I love it. I think it's endlessly fascinating.
So Steve Huff is 80 years old.
He just turned 80. Yep.
Wow. I mean, my dad is 88, and I cannot imagine him on the back of a skiff. I mean,
not only is he 80, he's not really guiding anymore. He's got 12 folks or whatever that he just, they're buddies that fish with him, but he is fishing the March Merkin as we speak right now.
Really
guiding Carl Hiaasen.
Really?
Yes.
How did Carl Hiaasen talk him into doing that? That's amazing.
It's a great question. I'm actually doing a story on those. I'm going to call him tomorrow night when it's over and get the lowdown on that. But I think Carl was just relentless, as he is in a lot of things. Was just completely relentless. It was like, we're doing this, and Steve was like, why not?
Wow, that is a surprise, because I don't know.
It's got to be the first
time he fished in a tournament.
Last time he fished a tournament was a long time ago. Long time ago. I mean, it had to have been maybe a Gold Cup back in the 90s, I would say. I mean, it's been a long time.
I was never in a tournament with Steve Huff.
Okay, and you started when were you in the 90s or 2000s?
Yeah, in the 90s. So I've got this thing on the wall back here. 1994 was my first year guiding, and he was not fishing.
Yeah, he was about to move to Everglades City. Yep. Yeah.
And that tournament tends to be extremely windy and extremely tough. So I hope they have good weather.
Yeah. It's an interesting tournament for them to dive into. I think it may have a better chance of success given the fact that Kat Vallely won. I don't know, in 2023. I think she won with the only permit caught in the entire tournament. Right. So maybe your odds are better there. I'm not sure.
Well, you know what? That's my little secret. That permit became my favorite fish to fish for, and I fished for them a whole bunch, and I developed a whole clientele of fly anglers coming down to permit fish, but kind of secretly. when I showed up in Key West, the permit fishing was fantastic. It was really, really good.
Yep.
There weren't very many bonefish around. Very, very hard to find bonefish. I didn't know much about tarpon at the time, so I kind of gravitated to the permit because I thought, hey, if you don't catch anything, so what? Nobody's catching anything. You know what? That was kind of my thing as a starting guide. I was like, well, I'll do this. Like, if you catch one, you're a hero. If you don't catch one, everybody's like, oh yeah, man, me too.
You went permit fishing. Right?
Yeah,
that's a good call.
But then I stuck with it a little bit because I still couldn't find any bonefish. So I'm like, well, I guess we could go over here. And basically we were throwing at fish. We weren't actually fishing for them back then because I didn't know how to do it. And then, sooner or later, one turns around and eats it, and you get some confidence. But I don't think that's how Steve Huff feels about permit.
Probably not.
I don't think that's how he feels.
Probably
about
not.
it. I think he thinks that they're all catchable, and you just have to do it right.
I agree.
Did he give you much history on him and Del Brown?
Mm-hmm. Lots. Yeah, I mean, they
really
talk
about Del Brown a lot.
Yeah, he does. He had it's a real kind of poignant end to that story, but they had a real partnership for a long, long time. And Del was just as insatiable as Steve was. Yes. I mean, they really kind of popularized a sport that was not very popular until Del started. Yeah, the two of them started catching a bunch of fish.
It wasn't even a sport.
Yeah,
it really was.
It was like a nuisance fish on the flat, right?
But from an outside perspective, those two guys created that sport.
Yep, I
and
fully agree.
Everyone else, including some of the guys that they fished with, that other guys that Del fished with that I know well, will say the same thing. Those guys created the sport, and we're all just doing what they did. Yep. And that's, I mean, it wasn't even a sport.
Yeah,
it was like it was a silly activity for most people.
I fully agree. And the fishing nerd in me, like I was out with Nat Linville doing a story on him, and I was like, where did Del catch that monster? The biggest one he ever caught, which is still, I think, the biggest one I ever caught on a fly. And he's like, come on, we'll show you. And so we motored over to the flat, which was called Scene of the Crime, which you probably know. But it was just, the fishing nerd in me was like, this is where it happened? Like, this is so cool. Like, can we stay here for a little while? They're like, it doesn't fish very well anymore, but still. But the Steve Del thing had kind of this really poignant ending, actually, because Del was, I think, 20 years older, maybe 25 years older than Steve, and they'd just been going and going and going and going and going for years and years and years and years and years, and Del's getting older, and Steve tells this story about the last time they fished together that it was blowing like it always seems to be, and Steve was just a relentless. He never would motor in anywhere. Never used a trolling motor or anything like that. He would pole in, so he wanted to pull into this place where he thought these permit would be, but pulling into a 25-mile-an-hour wind, it took him like 45 minutes to pole to get into position. And when he got there, Del just sat down because Del was tired. He was 82 years old or something like that, and just exhausted. And he said, Steve, I can't do it. And Steve was like, what do you mean you can't do it? He said, no, I just can't do this. So Steve, put the motor back in and drove back, and he describes a scene where he's just bawling as he's Del can't see him because Del's sitting in front of him, but he's just bawling because he knows it's over. And so at that, they get back to the dock, and he embraces Del and says, we're not fishing together anymore.
Wow.
Which seems like an incredibly, it's a complicated story. I feel like I kind of understand it, but Steve was still in that phase where he was, or he still is, but he was so excellent, right, that he wanted to fish with people who had the same insatiability and excellence that he did. And Del was just too old, and his quote, I think, was like, Del just got old, and it broke my heart, is what he said. So there's this kind of poignancy, I feel like, to their relationship. But yeah, we talk about him a lot. You spend 10 hours a day on a boat with someone 15 feet away from him. We've talked about pretty much everything,
What interests Steve Huff outside of fishing?
He is an incredible bicyclist. Actually, he and his wife have bicycled from Everglades City They did their very first one. They Everglades City to someplace in Washington State, and enjoyed it so much across the whole country. Enjoyed it so much that they canceled their airplane reservations and biked all the way back. But they biked everywhere: Ireland, Canada, lots of places in Europe. So they're very avid bicyclists. And Steve he's got all these beautiful palm trees from all over the world in his yard, which he loves. He's a big time reader. I love talking. He's always got some book that he wants to tell me about. And usually when I go down there, we exchange books. I'll give him my favorite one that I've been reading lately, and he'll do the same. He's just a really fun guy to talk to, an interesting guy, kind of a father figure-ish, I think, to not just me, but a whole legions of other folks, even to people around his age. I feel like he's still got this kind of he kind of exudes, he's funny. He's like, he'll tell a dirty joke and he'll bust your BALLS's, but he kind of exudes integrity. It just not only when it comes to fishing and stuff like that, but just in terms of life, right? I mean, you could just his BS detector's turned up pretty good. So.
I bet so. What kind of books interest him?
He really likes nonfiction history books, but I've been bringing him some novels, and he, if you get him a good novel, he'll read it. But he loves read about World War II. He loves read about, there was some book he read about Papua New Guinea. I mean, he reads all kinds of very kind of eclectic breadth to his reading tastes.
We have a lot of readers here. We have a book club. How about 3 novels that you suggest?
Oh my God! All right, so
any 3.
All right. Well, I mean, you might not have read Gatsby since 10th grade, but it's a must-read. I feel like it is one of the books that is always pertinent, I think. And I think as we enter into whatever we're going into right now, it feels even more pertinent and so beautifully written. And then, probably my favorite book of all time is a James Salter book called Light Years, which is just an absolute gorgeous, sentence to sentence gorgeous. It's a sad topic. It's about the dissolution of a marriage, but Salter's not really a well-known writer. He was a World War II pilot who wrote kind of like while he was in battle. He was in Korea as well, but wrote just some beautiful prose. Didn't write very many books. That's why people don't know much about him, but just unbelievable. And then, the novels. Oh, I got a good one for you. There's a book called Whiskey When We're Dry, which is also one of my favorite books I've read in the last 10 years, written by a steelhead guide named John Larison. And it is awesome. It is like, it's a Western. It's sort of a true grit type Western, but the lead character is a little bit different. I'll leave it at that. But it is just a rollicking, just incredible book. I give it out I just sent it to a friend of mine. I give it out to people all the time. It's just a great, great book. So those are my 3 off the top.
Did he write more?
He wrote a follow-up that didn't quite get as much traction, it feels like. But Whiskey When We're Dry, I believe, was optioned for a movie and will be made at some point.
Wow.
It's when you read it, you're like, oh my God, this should definitely be a movie. You can even like picture some of the people who might act in it, but it's just great. And I love the fact that
that's what I thought. I read a Carl Hiaasen book. I was like, this is definitely going to be a movie, and I was right. Later.
Yep. Yeah. I love Hiaasen stuff too. I mean, Double Whammy is to me one of the great.
That was my favorite. That was the first one I ever read, and still my favorite. Right away. I read that, and like, I don't know. In high school, I didn't really like reading because they were telling me to. So that's kind of my personality in a nutshell. Mm-hmm. Somebody told me I had to do it, so I didn't really want to do it. And so I never really developed the love of reading that I have today. And honestly, that book was one of the books that I read, and I was just kind of like, oh, reading can be fun and funny. And I had never really truly laughed out loud, like laughing hysterically at a book. That was one of them. It was a real game changer for me. I was like I like reading, and then I tore through like 6 or 8 more. I got 6 or 8 other good ones right after that, and all of a sudden I'm a reader, and it really, really made a big difference. And the other thing that made a difference in my reading. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just saying he'd be very happy. He'd be very happy to hear that.
Yeah, I'm sure that he would, because that's probably like Steve Huff loves to watch someone catch a tarpon. He loves to watch someone truly laugh out loud at something that he wrote.
Yep.
But I don't know. It's just the timing of the book and everything was just perfect for me just to pick it up and read it and basically tear straight through it. There's not a lot of books that I've read in one sitting like I read your book, Lords of the Fly. Because I knew a lot of those guys, and if I didn't know them, I knew their story, and I'm a fishing nerd, and so like you just had these stories in there, and I remember sitting in this like on a bar stool kind of thing in our kitchen, a hardwood stool. And that book came, and I started reading it, and I was just gonna kind of just breeze through it a little bit and look at it. And I read like the first little bit of it, and I just stuck with it. The next thing I know, it's like an hour and a half later, I'm still sitting on this hardwood bar stool in a terribly uncomfortable situation. You would never sit like that unless something really captured your attention. So that was a really good one. I've suggested it to a lot of people, including a guy that I know that just bought a house in Homosassa. I'm like, this is a must read. You got to know. He doesn't know the history. He doesn't know it. He doesn't know the fishing history there because they don't fish there like that anymore.
Yeah. No, I thank you for saying that. That book was a kind of. I didn't know if anyone was going to read it it came out during the early stage of the pandemic, kind of like, I think it was September, and I just wasn't sure anyone was going to read it, and it has been one of the better experiences that I've had. With the Saban book and with the Carroll book, you get a lot of kind of I would say like kind of attention way up here from 40,000 feet, right? Like the blogs and the ESPN and all that sort of stuff. Feinbaum will have you on, all that kind of stuff. Lords of the Fly had this real personal. I haven't counted them yet, but I literally have had hundreds of people emailing. They found my email on my website and emailing me, and some people just saying, "Hey, man, thanks I loved it," and then other people writing me like about fishing with their dad and all this like crazy stuff. It's just been such a cool. I had a really cool experience. I went down to Sarasota in December for a book signing for Rivers Always Reach the Sea, which is the collection that came out in last June. And I had this woman come up. She was kind of, there was people had gathered up for this talk I was going to do or whatever. And this woman she was a little shy. She kind of walked up and she had in her hand a copy of Lords of the Fly that looked like someone had put it like in the washing machine and then left it outside for 40 days. I mean, it was like the most, like literally, I felt like if I opened it, it was going to disintegrate. And she said it was her son's, but he couldn't be there. It was her son's book, and he's read it. She got it for him when he was 14, and he's now 18. He's probably read it like a dozen times, and he just wanted you to sign it. And it was like this upwelling. I was very careful about opening it up because there were pages loose and it underlined stuff in there, and I signed it, and I had this upwelling of gratitude because all you really ever want is for someone else out there to love it too. That's it, And that I feel like I'm going to cry right now, but like that was one of the most meaningful, cool things that has ever happened to me. It was like you just seeing that book, like that, seeing that love.
That's really cool. That's really cool. So when you have that, certainly in the fishing, you've had some great experiences with the football. Do you feel like you need to branch out and try something different, or more fishing books, more football books? You taking a break? Like, what does it look like? What's interesting to you now?
I wish I could take a break, but my profession now is like you got to be like a shark, man. If you don't keep producing stuff, you're going to just sink to the bottom. I think that I don't know about another idea that would carry an entire fishing book. I will certainly keep. Like I said earlier, I've been writing articles about fish. Written the last 4 weeks, I've written 3 articles about fishing. So I'll continue to do that. Like college football, I'm not topped out there yet. I still think there's some meat on the bone there to write about. And but I'm very open to doing, and I worked at Forbes for 15 years. I did all kinds of different stories, right? I did stories on hedge fund guys and CEOs and, crazy entrepreneurs, stuff like that. So I'm always open to doing other things. I mean, publishers love to kind of pigeonhole you and be like, oh, what's this college football guy doing? I found that a little bit when I wrote Lords of the Fly. I'd just written 2 college football books. I'm like, yeah, what's this college football guy doing trying to write about fishing? So it's like, but it's in the end, it's up to me, right? I mean, I'm not going to pigeonhole myself. So yeah, if a great idea came along and it was something I was really interested in, had an interesting characters, yeah, I'd write about pretty much anything, I think.
But you got to pass it by your agent first.
That's true. And
right?
he'll probably say,
okay,
that stinks, try again.
So how about, has there ever been an idea that you thought was just the greatest thing you've ever come up with, and you pass it by your agent and he's like, this is the worst thing I've ever heard? Have you ever been that far apart?
Well, I mean, there are ideas. He usually says no to the ones that I'm a little bit unsure of, but that I push anyway. And like, I'll realize later, I was like, yeah, I really wasn't into that. But we've had ones that, I've written full proposals for that haven't gotten, that other people have passed on, which hasn't happened that much, but it's happened. I wanted to write a book about Deion Sanders, who I thought was just fascinating. I still might do it. I don't know. But for whatever reason, he had his own book coming out, I think, at the same time. So, for whatever reason, that one didn't work. But that happens too. I mean, and they probably all happen for good reason. I mean, there's probably a good reason that you didn't. Certainly the ones that my agent says aren't good usually are very good reasons that I didn't do it. I had one, a good example of one is I wanted to do one on Aaron Rodgers. And my agent was like, yeah, let's do that one or whatever. We went to a publisher and he was like, don't. I was like, why? He said, because there's another big time football guy who's about 3/4 of the way through with an Aaron Rodgers book. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank you. So you never know, right? I mean, it's like, you never really know what other people are doing and stuff like that. So usually it's a good thing. I'll put it that way.
You never know what people are doing, but I find it interesting, like in the movies, like all of a sudden there'll be like, there are no Westerns they go into the theaters, and then all of a sudden there's like 3 movies on the OK Corral. All of a sudden, one summer, 3 different production houses. Yep. You're like, what the heck? How did that happen? Or all of a sudden, superhero movies, like crazy. Yep. And it's like nobody communicates. Nobody understands that. Oh, there's another big one going on over here.
Yeah, but there'll be like 2 incredible. It happens in nonfiction writing. It happens when there's like an anniversary coming up. If it's like the 100-year anniversary of Mark Twain's death or something like that, or if there's some sort of, I'm sure there'll be a lot of, 250th America at 250 years old books coming out real soon. Yeah. It happens. I would think that Deion Sanders and Aaron Rodgers are 2 very interesting people. Very interesting people. Totally.
There are definitely books there, and there's definitely angles that other people are taking, but Deion Sanders is. That's a rare individual. No matter how you think, no matter what you think about him, no matter whether you like him or don't like him, if you look at what he did, it's truly incredible to play in 2 different professional leagues at the same time. That's amazing. I mean, that's amazing. It's just incredible. And then then he goes and and then he goes and does this Colorado thing, and it didn't quite pan out like I think he thought it was going to, but he sticks with it. Like, that is surprising to me. I kind of thought, just like his kid's gone, and the other athletes that he brought in there are now gone. Is he going to stick around or not? And he does. It's just an interesting thing. Like, what makes him do that? He doesn't need to.
You go back to just the what he escaped as a child too. I don't
know all of that, but
he poverty, but also like all of his friends becoming, going to jail and being, doing all this kind, and he escaped it with discipline, which is like it's really incredible. Also, by the way, he loves bass fishing.
I know he does. He has had a little foray into fishing television.
Oh yeah,
And then he's got the lake. He loves the bass fishing, but I think that he's a very interesting guy, and certainly the fishing angle. That's one of the reasons why I know anything about him. I mean, certainly I'm a fan of sports and things, but then when I find out that any athlete is a fisherman, like, wow, that's pretty cool. Like
I'm the same way,
but especially him. Like, he is an incredible athlete.
Yep. Well, that may be one that I'll come back to.
Bo Jackson would be another one. Like, and he's a hunter and a fisherman and just a freak athlete. I mean, of once in a 300 year, 500 year athlete. I don't know. I mean,
and they were contemporaries.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I mean, and that's I got to see Bo Jackson play professional baseball and college football. I took my dad to the Iron Bowl, and we watched Bo Jackson beat Alabama in the Iron Bowl. When Alabama's big running back was Bobby Humphrey, and then we had Bo Jackson on the other side, and man, they won that one.
Yep.
But that's the only time I actually got to see Bo Jackson in person play football.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he was incredible. A contemporary of mine wrote a really good book about Bo Jackson, so there's one already out there. And Bo loves bow hunting. He loves deer hunting.
Yes,
He's a big hunter.
I mean, there's a guy that is so good. I mean, he has been world class at many different things. Can you imagine him as a bow hunter? And you're nerdy already as a bow hunter, and you have to get your bow dialed in perfectly. Mm-hmm. I would think that Bo Jackson would be so into that. Like, I don't know, you see some other athletes that all of a sudden they start playing golf or something, and they put in the same amount of practice that they did in their original sport.
Yep.
But then also, like, a Bo Jackson sees how a bow and arrow works and gets all the best gear and then does the work to get perfect at it. I mean, watch out. He's going to be one. And also, he's starting where everybody else starts down here. He's starting, his baseline is way up here.
It's funny you bring that up because it's a lot like I have a story about Andy Mill in that collection story in Rivers Always Reach the Sea, and it's a lot like Andy. I mean, Andy he never really maybe reached his potential as a ski racer, but he was the best in the United States by far. Mm-hmm. And finished sixth in the Olympics one year, and then sort of translated that to tarpon tournament angling and became, the Tiger Woods of the tarpon tournament angling scene. Why
would that be any surprise? I mean, when you start out and your mindset is excellence.
Yep.
And then you go to, I don't know, someplace where it's not that. You're starting at a place that other people are never even going to get to.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you got to put it. He'll often say that tarpon angling was his redemption, right? Because he didn't feel like he reached his full potential as a skier. He was known as the wilde hund, which is wild dog. The Europeans called him that because he was always nuts on the course, like insane lines on the course, but he was also insane off the course, partying and in Val d'Isère and Wengen and all that sort of stuff. And so he'll say that tarpon fishing was kind of like his second chance, the tarpon tournament angling, where he was kind of mature enough to put it all together. But like, as you said, he had learned he'd seen what excellence was. Like he'd kind of and he'd been excellent, really. I mean, if you're one of the top, 10 downhillers in the world, you're excellent, there's no doubt about it. Maybe you're not the top, but you're excellent. So it is fascinating, this transferring of skills. There's another, just to bring up one other person like that, is the first college football book I ever did was called Fourth and Goal. It was about the guy who was the CEO of TD Ameritrade, who always wanted to be a college football coach and had coached at Dartmouth, back when he was 25 or whatever, then gone into finance. And he quit at age 60 and decided to pursue a job in college football. No one wanted to hire him because they were like, who's this rich, weird kook like trying to do it? And he finally gets a job at Coastal Carolina, turns that program totally around. Again, a transferable thing, right? I mean, he learned how to lead. He learned how to manage people. He had a lot of discipline, and he just transferred that over to coaching college football. It doesn't always work. There was another guy named Bill Campbell who was a great finance guy who was a terrible football coach. But it is interesting when it does happen. It's fascinating.
Yeah. Well, some people, you get good at one thing, you can get good at anything. So I appreciate you coming back on. This is this has been fascinating. I can't wait to read. I'm going to read. I've just kind of skimmed through the books, but and saw some friends and other people in your fishing book. But I also want to read the other one because good stories, man. But I appreciate you coming on and
of course,
good job being so busy over the last 5 years.
Got to keep it going.
Writing all this. Yeah, man. Well, good luck.
Got to get those kids through college.
Appreciate you coming back. Where do they get your books? Wherever they're sold, or
wherever they're sold. Amazon. I've got Amazon's a good place, and then I've got my own website too. If you just want to check them out and see if you maybe look at them before you buy them, you can.
And then there's also your emails on the bottom of the website. So
and if you feel free to send me any kind of email you want. You can chastise me. You can whatever you want to do.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. And we'll be back next week with another great guest. Monty, thank you very much. Great catching up with you.
Thank you, Tom.